Shalom, shalom. I'm Moreh Rapha'Yah. Welcome to our program on the Torah effects. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe so you can get more productions that are on their way. Tonight we will talk about something that perhaps it hasn't been talked about for a long time, and this will be one of the greatest topics that we can ever bring. And this will be 6 days before Pesach, in the time of the Mashiach. And it's so important to understand that in this year, the calendar of Yahweh fell exactly the same as it was in the first century when Mashiach died. So it will be exactly the same timing. So for lack of a better word, let's start off, and we will be starting off with the first clip here. I want you to see how the first century they have the Pesach, which is the Passover. And I want you to notice something very, very important. You don't see only 12 here. You see more than 12 people, or more, 13 in other words. But the reality is that we will see a little later why do we see this. Let's continue. Start off with John or Yochanan 12 verse 1. Then 6 days before the Passover, the Pesach, Yeshua came to Bethany where Eleazar or Lazarus was, who had died, whom he raised from the dead. Now you got to understand, you probably might want to ask yourself, why was it outside Jerusalem? Why was it out? Instead of being inside Jerusalem, he was outside. You got to understand something very important. People were threatened by him, especially the Sanhedrin, which is the Jewish council. They knew that he was stirring people up, shaking people up, because they knew that he was bringing the good news, and they felt threatened because the Mashiach was opening their eyes of what was already on that era, which is a lot of traditions. So to make things better and also to fulfill the prophecy, he needed to be outside because the time was not there yet. That's why you see 6 days prior to the Passover, Mashiach was outside, came to Bethany. Literally, Bethany is literally outside Jerusalem. It's literally out there, outside the walls. So he came to Lazarus, which happens to be his cousin. Remember that Martha was his cousin, and Lazarus was the brother of Martha and Miriam. Obviously, they were cousins. And we knew that he came to their house. Martha prepared supper, prepared dinner for them. And it wasn't only them, it was many people who came to see not only the Mashiach, the Yeshua, but also Lazarus, Eleazar. So let's continue so we can see the sequence of how these verses are opening our eyes, how the Mashiach came to be 6 days prior to the last Pesach. If you notice here, so we can see the graphic, so at least you have a better understanding. Yeshua here happens to be, according to the Torah, he came in the 10th of Abib. The 10th of Abib, according to, and let me pause here for just a few seconds. According to chapter 12 of Exodus, it says very clear that every Passover, they needed to set apart a lamb on the 10th day of Abib. From the 10th to the 14th, they have roughly 4 days to make sure that nothing was wrong with the lamb. It was no defects, nothing going on physically speaking, so that way it will be the perfect lamb to be slaughtered. In other words, it needed to be inspected. Mashiach came forward on the 10th day of Abib to be inspected. Not only for those, his family, okay, but those around him. And not only there outside Bethany, as well, when he went into Jerusalem to be inspected by the Sanhedrin, the Jewish council as well. So we can pretty much see how he was inspected by everyone if he was a true Messiah, true Mashiach of Israel. So let's continue. We can see pretty much that Martha prepares dinner here, and it happens to be 2 calendars in the first century. And that's why you see below it says 9 of Aviv. We can pretty much trace 2 calendars in the first century. The one that Mashiach follows, which is the 10th of the Torah calendar, and the one that there was the Jewish calendar. We all know that they adopted this calendar, this pagan calendar, in Babylon when they were in exile for 70 years. When they came out with dragging this bunch of customs, including the pagan Babylonian calendar. How do we know that? You can actually Google, you'll find out that this calendar has the same names, the same pattern, the same lunar patterns, and so forth. So it has nothing short but pagan Babylonian calendar, what is called today the Jewish calendar. But we can notice, and we'll see the difference between one another. The following teaching is going to be called 2 calendars, 2 Pesachs. That will be the part 2 of these Shurim, or this teaching. So let's continue. So we know that he came on a Friday, okay, on the first century, which happens to be the same as this year. So he came, and we know what he did, but we already know there was already a sunset, which it was the 11th of Aviv. Remember that every day starts from sundown to sundown. It was already the 10th of Aviv. Now let's go into John 11:55. And the Pesach of the Jews was near, and many went up to Jerusalem out of the country before the Pesach, that they might be purified themselves. Let's pause here for a moment. 2 things. The Pesach of the Jews. Number 2, people came out of the country to the festival to purify themselves. If you are in the Hebrew culture, you know very well that in every festival there is always a tevilah, which is called in English immersions. And every time there is a festival, you need to make a tevilah. Number 2, Pesach of the Jews. Do you notice how the writer is making the difference between one calendar and the other calendar? Do you know why? Because we all know that the Torah speaks about the festivals of Yahweh. It's not the festivals of the Jews. And the reason for it is because Yahweh is the one giving it to us. We don't have any ownership on festivals. We don't have any ownership on Shabbat. We truly don't have any ownership about anything, because everything belongs to Yahweh. So why does the writer makes a difference between the Pesach, or the Passover of the Jews, and the calendar of Yahweh? Is because he wants to make a difference between one another, so we can notice that there were 2 calendars there. Now let's continue. John 11:56. And then they saw Yeshua and said with one another, standing on the Mikdash, which is the temple, what does it seem to you? Does he know that at all to come to the feast? They were expecting him to come to the festival of Passover, but that festival happens to be the last one. So of course he did not go, because he was by that time he was already going to be on the post, on what they call it, on the cross. Now let's continue. John 11:57. And all the chiefs, priests, and the Pharisees have given command, if anyone knew where he is, he shall inform, so that they might seize him. Do you see that? So in other words, They already were expecting him to come, but of course, he did it on his own time, not in their time. Why? Because that's why he was going in and out of Jerusalem, because it needed to be the exact time as the Torah commands, not before that. That's why he was going in and out, in and going back to Bethany, again and going back again. See that? He wasn't going in there because he wanted to put himself in harm's way, because the time wasn't right. It's not the time of man, it's the time of Yahweh. It has to be the time that the prophets already prophesied that he needed to die. Let's continue. So we come to the 11th of Abib. The Mashiach, if you notice, the Mashiach enters to Jerusalem. The Yerushalayim, not only he enters, but he also cries. And after he cries, he also watches the temple from a far distance. After the temple, watching the temple, gazes at the temple, we know that he goes back to Bethany. Let's read on. John 12 and 13. 12 and 13. And the next day, coming to the feast, hearing that Yahushua is coming to Jerusalem, the great crowd took palm branches and went out of to meet with him. And they cried out, Hoshiachna, Hoshiachna, being blessed are the one coming in the name of Yahweh, the King of Israel. You notice here, Hoshiachna means in Hebrew, come and save us, come and help us. Why? Because it was already prophesied in Psalms, his triumph entrance to Jerusalem. It is important because he needed to make an entrance on that Shabbat. Why? Because remember that Shabbat was made for humans, for men, not men for the Shabbat. You see that? So it's very important for us to understand, especially the Mashiach, that he enters into Jerusalem. Let's continue. Luke 19:41 and 2 and 42. And he drew near, seeing the city, he wept over it, saying, if you have none, even you, even at least in this day of yours, the things for your shalom, for your peace, now they were hidden from your eyes. Why is the Mashiach saying all these things? Remember, the Mashiach is not just the Mashiach, he's not just the Redeemer, he's also a prophet. He's already prophesying what's coming in the future, what's coming to Jerusalem, the destruction of the year 70 AD. He knew what was coming. He knew there was the destruction of Jerusalem coming near in the future. But we knew, that's why he cries, that's why he gazes at Jerusalem. That's why he knows what's coming, not just the city, but the people around. And he told the disciples what was coming. Mark 11:11, Yahushua entered into Jerusalem, and it enters in the Mikdash, or the temple. And having looked around of all things, the hour already being late, he went out to Bethany with the 12. Do you see that? He did all this. He enters, he gazes, he did what he needed to do to fulfill the prophecy, and he went back out of Jerusalem because it was in the right time. So we know that based upon other verses, the Mashiach fulfilled the prophecies to the letter, to the yod. So no wonder why Matthew 17:5 says, I did not come to abolish, I came to fulfill to the very letter, to the yod. To the small yod is the small little tittle of the Torah. So let's continue. Now is already Sunday, what they call it, which is Yom Rishon, which is the first day of the week, which is the 12th of Abib, 11 of Nisan. Yahushua curses the fig tree. Yahushua returns, merchants cast out. Yahushua comes out of Jerusalem. They notice, I don't know if you knew this, but when he enters to to, to the temple, the Mikdash, in the first century, it wasn't just one time. He did it many times. So I'm sure when he saw him coming, they already knew that he was about to cast out all the money exchangers and the sellers. And you know why he did that? Because in the first century, the Sanhedrin, which is the Jewish council, had a deal with the sellers. You know, wherever they were selling animals, but they were not tamim. Tamim means perfect. Every animal that they had all kinds. Either they were good or not good. The point for them is to make a revenue, so they can give a portion to the Sanhedrin. And that's why the Mashiach said, you have made this place a cave, a den of robbers. Why? Because they were robbing the Creator. They were not making that set apart place, the Mikdash, the house of prayer, a kadosh, a set apart place. And that's why the Mashiach was very infuriated, and I would not blame him for that. Let's continue. And let's look at these verses. Mark 11:12. And on the morrow, they going out of Bethany, he hungered. He saw a certain fig tree from afar, and he had leaves on it, and he came towards it, and to see it, if he could find anything on it. And when he arrived, he did not find anything on it except leaves, for the time of the figs have not yet arrived. And answering, Yeshua said to it, let no one eat fruit of you anymore forever. And his disciples heard of it. So what happens here? We know that the fig tree is, at that time, it was Yehudah. It was our Jewish brothers. But that will be another video for another teaching. Let's continue. So what he said, it was something that, allegorically speaking, was for our Jewish brothers in that particular time. But we know that he came in the following day, coming out from Bethany. Now let's continue with the next one. 11:15. And they came to Jerusalem, and entering the Mikdash, or the temple, Yeshua began to throw out those sellers and buying in the Mikdash, or the temple. Also, he overturned the tables of the money exchangers and the seats of those selling the doves. Once again, is the reason we already spoke of. And that was something that our Mashiach was very, very angry about. Mark 11:9. And when evening came, he went out of the city. Once again, our Mashiach, trying not to get caught, he went outside, back out of Jerusalem, so he can fulfill to the letter what's coming in the near future. Let's go with the Monday, which is Abib 13. It is Nisan 12. It is the fig dries out, which is the following day the fig is already dead. Mark 11 verse 20. And passing along early, they saw the fig tree wither from the roots. What happened, brothers and sisters? Exactly what Mashiach said a day before. He cursed it, and therefore that fig tree was completely dry. This is something that, once again, we'll speak another time for another teaching about the meaning of it and what's also signifies to all of us as well. Let's go into Tuesday, which is Abib 14. Now, this is a very special day, which is the preparation and also the Seder of Pesach. We'll talk about in a bit. Also is the 13th of Nisan, but it's the 14th of Abib. Now we know that there are two events here. The first one that we see here, where you see the arrow here, is basically, it's called the preparation. The preparation is basically takes place at 3 p.m. And that's what is called the shechita. Shechita is where you kill the lamb at between the 2 evenings. Now, those who don't know about what's the meaning of the 2 evenings, is between the 12 to 3 p.m. is the first evening, and from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. is the second evening. Between the 2 evenings is basically 3 p.m. That's what the Torah speaks of. Now, we know that our Mashiach, it was asked, and we'll see the verses in just a second. The disciples asked him, where do you want us to prepare the seder, which is the dinner? And where do you want us to kill, the lamb, in other words? So that's 2 different things. First one is basically the shechita. The shechita is basically killing the animal. Then they need to prepare. They have about 3 hours to prep it, to roast it. And then at nighttime, which is already the 15th of Abib, they eat it. That's what the Torah speaks of. And let's just see the graphic. So this is the preparation, which is shechita. And we see the arrow here, which is called the seder. That's where you eat the dinner. That's where you eat the lamb. Our Mashiach ate, did the seder first, okay? And then they ate the dinner of the lamb. Now let's look at what Luke or Hillel 22 verse 7 and 8. And the day of the unleavened bread came, on which the Pesach must be slaughtered. Do you see that? And he sent Peter and John, saying, having gone, prepare for us the Pesach, so we may eat it. You see that? So one thing is to slaughter, and the other one is to eat it. 2 different events. Do not confuse and put them together, because one is at 3 p.m. on the 14th of Abib, and 15, which is already sunset. Remember that Hebrew days start from sundown to sundown. That night was already the 15th. Here, if you notice, is called the shechita. The shechita is basically where you actually kill the lamb. You kill the lamb here, okay? And when you kill the lamb, you basically do the shechita, okay? And when you kill the lamb, you basically do that at 3 p.m. So that's one thing. That's one thing that we have to notice. And without taking that in account, you'll be so confused. So we need to make the assumption that that event took place. So once again, the shechita is basically kill the lamb. Now, when you kill the lamb, basically it was around this time, which is 3 p.m. That's the time that they need to kill the lamb. And at nighttime, that's what they ate, which is the 15th of Abib. The 15th of Abib was already eating with his disciples, which is the 14th of Nisan. Let's continue. So at nighttime, where we already know, those who keep the Pesach, we know that it is already the 15th of Abib, where we eat the dinner, we eat the seder, right? Where we do the ceremony of the seder, the Agadah, right? And we eat the dinner of Pesach. That's what is called the seder. That takes place at nighttime when it's already dark. Luke 22 verse 9, and they said to him, where do you desire to prepare? And he said to them, behold, when you enter into the city, you will meet up with a man who is bearing a skin of water. Go after him, and where he enters, you will stay sorry, we will say to the house master of the house, our master says to you, where is the guest room where I may eat the Pesach with my disciples? The one will show you a large upper room, which is he has furnished, prepare there. So we can pretty much see, let me just pause here for a second. We pretty much see that, and we'll see it next, that every room that especially the Mashiach, he had 12 disciples, plus him is 13, plus the guest, the house master, because he asked him in the Shem Tov, the Hebrew says that I want to eat the dinner with you and my disciples. So it wasn't the 12, only the 12. It wasn't just the Mashiach and the 12. It was the house master and his family. And we have to understand this, brothers and sisters. Wherever you see all the pictures and all the portrayings and the Da Vinci paintings that you see, it's only 12 people. No, that's incorrect. Every Jewish family in the first century, there always was a family with kids, with wives, with everybody. Do you imagine? That's what it was, a large. Let's go back, and I want you to see that. Verse 12, it says, the one will show you a large upper room. Do you see that? So it wasn't a small, it was a large. It was made to fit a whole lot of people. So it was a very large quantity of people that they witnessed our Mashiach taking the last Pesach with these disciples, bearing all this witness, because I want you to understand that they bear witness so they can tell the rest of the people, so they might say that, oh, he made it up. No, there were a lot of people who witnessed this. So I want you to understand that there was a reason why all these people needed to witness the Mashiach doing this, washing the feet from the disciples and so forth. So there's a lot of guests and a lot of witness to witness this. Let's continue. So you can see this is just a portrait how large room was, and it was pretty big. And when in the very beginning I show you how this could be even more so with kids, wives, a whole lot of people. Remember that disciples, they had their own wives too as well. It wasn't just them. Especially Rapha'Yah, we know that he had a wife. He even had a mother-in-law. So we know that they have families. Luke 22:13, and having gone, they found as he had told them, and they have prepared the Pesach. Why? Because they needed to do the way exactly how Mashiach explained them how they needed to do the Pesach in the proper timing. So, 22 verse 14, and when the hour came, he reclined and the 12 apostles with him. So, if you notice here where it says he reclined, is because, let's go back over here. If you notice the way they reclined themselves, they didn't sit on a chair. They actually reclined themselves like this. That was the Jewish way to do it. The Eastern custom, how they eat a supper, how they eat in the Jewish homes. So we have to understand that we need to change our Hebrew minds more and more. How the Western thinks today is totally different how the Eastern thinks. And another time, another shiur, another teaching will bring more of that. Is for tonight just enough, and we'll continue in the second part, which is going to be called the two Pesachs, the two Passovers, two calendars. Until next time, I'm Moreh Rapha'Yah, and thank you very much for everything. If you haven't subscribed, please do so you can get more content that is coming very, very soon. Thank you very much. I'm Moreh Rapha'Yah. Until then, shalom, shalom.
For more content in production, please subscribe to our channel and give us a like. Thank you. We'll begin.